The Full Circle Podcast. Compelling interviews and incredible tales from Colorado's western slope, from the mountains to the desert. Christi Reese and her team hear from the movers, shakers, and characters of the Grand Valley and surrounding mountain towns that make the western slope the place we all love. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll love with The Full Circle. Welcome to the Full Circle Podcast. I'm Christi Reese, your host, and I'm honored today to have as our guest Jay Seaton, the publisher of the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel. Welcome, Jay.
Thanks, Christi.
Yeah, so happy to have you here. It's been a while since we've gotten to just chat one-on-one.
Not outside of some other meeting.
Right, yes, I see you in a lot of things, but you're a very busy man. You
know, it's this job, it pulls you into all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't ordinarily on your own get involved with. But it's being the publisher of a community newspaper it's a different seat, and you see things from a perspective that perhaps you wouldn't otherwise see.
Mm-hmm. I want to jump into that more, but I want to start with a little bit of your history. So you went to law school.
I did.
Yeah. But your family was in media. So how did you think you did not want to get into the media business?
You know, I went to law school in order to get into the family company. We own small town newspapers around the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And law school turns out is kind of like a trade school. I mean, you get in, it's very competitive. You want to do well, and then you want to apply the trade, So that's what happened. I, got caught up in that race, and then, you apply to the good law firms. And I went to Kansas University, and so you apply to the law firms in Kansas City typically, and worked for a very large firm out of law school that specialized in tobacco defense work. And then I was a glorified paralegal in that job of 700 other lawyers. And so I went to work for a smaller firm of 170 lawyers where I could actually do what I found very interesting, which is commercial litigation.
Mm-hmm. And so when did you make that transition from pursuing a legal career to becoming a publisher?
It really wasn't the plan. I thought I'd practice law forever, but newspapers at the time were selling for extraordinary numbers, 13 times EBITDA, and we were sidelined. We were not in any kind of position to make an acquisition, and so I was more than happy to continue to practice law. And then 2008 happened, and we thought it was a correction, and a lot of newspapers came up for sale, including the Sentinel, which we thought was a extraordinary property, and that we were able to acquire it at a number that we thought made sense. And
so you were involved in the family business then, even though you were practicing law on your own.
Yeah, it's like on the board and shareholder and did some legal work for the company, but frankly, I was solely focused on litigation for my other clients until this opportunity presented itself. And then I did get interested, and the family decided, let's send the guy out there that doesn't know anything about newspapers and see how he does. And frankly, it's a very interesting way to make a living. It's not the living I was making as a lawyer, but it's not bad. And it's in terms of just sort of, intellectual food, it's fabulous.
Amazing. So circling back to your community involvement, you're on a lot of boards. You have been in the past and you are now. I'm not even sure which ones you're active on at the moment, but how do you make time for that? I know it must be really challenging to fit all that in.
I initially got involved in economic development here, partly selfishly. Like, hey, if we can grow the economic pie, then the company that we own will do better, and see more success. And that part's true. But I got passionate about economic development when I saw how it really works, and that is, one of the big problems in Grand Junction is it's a relatively poor community in terms of personal wealth. We're about $16,000 below the average household income, average annual household income.
For Colorado or for the nation?
Sorry, for Colorado.
Okay.
And that has all kinds of trickle-down bad effects, right? And so all these things that we work so hard to address, like, vagrancy, homelessness, drug abuse, low educational attainment, all the problems that we see in this community. The furthest upstream you can go is economic development, right? So if you can grow the economic pie, all of those downstream problems get easier to address. And so that's where I feel like I know something about it now. I can, push on it at the newspaper. And so, now I've gotten involved at the state level. I'm on the State Economic Development Commission. Mm-hmm. And so it's what was really a sort of a dirty business motive is actually, I think, trying to do right by people in the community by helping everyone get a bigger slice of the pie.
And that state community development board or economic development board, how do you bring attention to the Western Slope?
It's really interesting. It's commissioners from around the state, and it's a state. The Economic Development Commission oversees a lot of programs that are administered by the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, which is a
OEDIT.
OEDIT. It's a
yeah.
cabinet level state bureau, but it's interesting because so many of these programs are by no deliberate choice or deliberate intent. They disproportionately benefit metros. The big tool in the box is the job growth incentive tax credit. So if you create more than 15 jobs, you can get real tax credits as a new company or a company moving to the state.
Which is much easier to do in the Metroplex areas.
That's exactly right. And these smaller communities can't take advantage of it. So the first 6, 7 years, 8 years that I was on the EDC, not a dime of that tax credit came to anything outside of the I-25 corridor. So we, in that room, a number of commissioners all saw the same issue and said, this is not right. So we're trying to deploy resources to areas that really need them. And that, again, nobody intended the programs to work that way. It's not like they set out to somehow handcuff rural, but that's what happened. So, there's a real effort in that room among commissioners and the staff to try to help do whatever we can do to help rural and some of the communities in the state that don't perform economically or are in impending trouble, like Craig. So we also a couple of us here got really involved in trying to craft legislation that would move the needle on rural economic development. And so we stole an idea from New York. New York's program is called Startup New York, and we really strongly borrowed the idea and created the Rural Jumpstart program here and got it passed into law in I believe 2016, and it's been a very, very effective tool for a
great program
for GJEP. And it's funny. It's kind of a favorite of the Economic Development Commission. The other commissioners, they love seeing these rural companies get some sort of jumpstart.
Yeah, because when you talk about that 15 employees, I mean, in rural communities, if you hire 1 or 2 employees, you're pretty excited, right?
What we've figured is that 1 hire in rural Colorado is the equivalent of 20 on the front range.
Seriously?
Yeah. So
wow.
If you've got a new company that's moving in with 400 new jobs in Denver, that's that sounds like a whole lot, but it's the equivalent of 20 jobs here. Mm-hmm. A 20 job company is a massive company in Grand Junction.
Yeah. Wow. Let's get back to the Sentinel. What would you say makes you the right fit to publish this paper? What makes you a good newspaperman?
That's an interesting question, and I'm not sure I agree with the premise, but I think you do have to have an understanding of the role of the free press in our system of government, and take it very seriously, and I do. And I think part of that comes from my legal training, particularly around constitutional law. If you look at the way our Constitution was set up, which I think is almost a perfect document, the framers created the three branches of government, right? The apparatus of our government. And when they were finished with the first three articles, they then created a free press. The very next thing they did is create a free press immune from the power of that government. Mm-hmm. So if you take that charge seriously, and I think most community, like real newspaper people do, then that's your guide, right? And everything's pretty simple after that. Act with integrity, try to understand your goal, which is, you're taking vetted, reliable fact, and you're putting vetted, reliable fact on top of vetted, reliable fact. And what happens if you do that with seriousness is I think you get something close to the truth. I mean, I've been around long enough to know you're not going to get it perfect. You're not going to get it right without any some sort of nuance that is troubling. But you can get if your intentions are pure, you get real close. And if you do that as your mission every day, and you don't worry about criticism you're going to inevitably get, and don't worry about the people with a political agenda, which people are going to accuse us of having a political agenda, and I can tell you, straight-faced, I don't know the political affiliation of anyone in that newsroom. It is not talked about. There is an absolute prohibition on that type of chatter inside the newsroom. There are other parts of the building where people, might express an opinion about something politic, but not in the newsroom. So, there's a discipline around it, and that's not from me. That is from my predecessors, from the legacy of the Sentinel. I'm just carrying forward what I feel like is my role, painting within the lines and trying to produce an interesting, reliable news product.
Well, I think you're very well respected in the community, and that goes back to your community involvement and your obvious dedication to the Grand Valley. But also, the readership of the Sentinel is really strong, isn't it? I mean, you have more readers of the newspaper than a lot of newspapers do in this country.
That's
per capita, right?
We have very good penetration in this community. That's why we liked the Sentinel as an acquisition property in 2009. Newspaper circulations come down. It's come down at the Sentinel and everywhere else. Not everywhere else. Most community newspapers, but the number of people actually reading our content is up.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Things cycle, right? And things have changed drastically in a number of ways, but it does still cycle. We did something terrible as an industry 20 years ago, and that is we told people that, actually this was led by the New York Times of all places. They all said, you newspapers should put your content on this new medium, the internet, put it out there for free. And people will see how brilliant you are, and they'll subscribe to the printed newspaper. That was the theory. Totally wrong. What happened is we trained people to expect valuable news content for free. And we've been trying to put the toothpaste back in that tube ever since.
encourage your listeners and anyone else who may hear this, pay for news content.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the Sentinel or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Denver Post, pay for it because it's mighty important.
I agree with you. And why do you think the readership is higher here in Grand Junction? What is it about our community that likes the paper?
I do think it is partly our geographic isolation. The idea of a sentinel is a lone soldier on an outpost. And, I think, it was a very necessary part of the community for a long, long time. And it was also a very high quality newspaper. It was nurtured by good company, good men, and then good companies. We bought it from Cox Communications. They treat their properties well. It did not starve it. And so it had continued to have, very good content and good customer service and all the things that lead to a successful newspaper. That's continued. We've got some struggles here and there with customer service through COVID that really hurt us, but the larger story is still positive.
Everybody struggled with something through COVID, right? You guys weren't immune, so to speak.
And it was, it's just simply a workforce issue. Mean, a newspaper carrier is a pretty unique animal. I mean, you've got to be really industrious, hardworking to want to get up at 2 a.m. and go deliver, 300 newspapers or 500 newspapers around the community. Those people are hard to find, and this workforce pinch just led a lot of them away from delivering newspapers, and we've been working really hard ever since to get some back. Yeah.
You said earlier before about layering truth upon truth. Obviously, one of the buzzwords of today is fake news. And there's a big distinction between social media and these free news sites and a real media company. But how do you counteract that feeling that some people have that everything is fake news, that nothing's real, nothing that's reported is real?
Yeah, I really, really have a problem with that term and that concept. It's really unfortunate, and it goes along with the sort of the end of the expert, right? I mean, anyone can have an opinion, whether you're you have a PhD in virology or you have a computer and an internet connection. It's suddenly those two people are at the same level. But from my chair, fake news was actually a thing. If you can go all the way back to 2017, that actually had meaning. Like, there were people out there deliberately producing information that was intended to appear as factual information, but it was 100% baloney. I mean, the story of these Macedonian teenagers getting paid to try to, make some sort of false information go viral in this country for the purposes of kind of undermining institutions here, including the news media. And so now that the meaning of that term has changed so much. Now it's just like whatever you don't like, Yeah. My kids are like, broccoli? Not tonight. That's fake news, Dad. We're not having... It doesn't...
Oh my gosh, that's classic.
it doesn't have the same meaning, but in terms of what it means for our society, in terms of like our unwillingness to accept or even be able to vet information that comes across our plate, that's a very dangerous development when you consider, how many sources of news now, and you can kind of go pick your echo chamber that best suits
the flavor that you like,
best suits your worldview, and then everything else that doesn't square up with your narrow little worldview is fake news. It's just wrong. if I only watch Fox News, CNN is rank nonsense. And if I only watch CNN, Fox is crazy. That's not a healthy information ecosystem at all. Those companies in particular are, and when I say those companies, I mean cable news.
Yeah.
They're not into news. News is
it's
not
entertainment,
the game.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
It's entertainment presented as news.
Yep.
But it's actually not news at all.
So reading a newspaper at the local level, super important to get your local news. But you guys also carry a lot of national content that you get from other providers. But it's vetted.
We do. And, it's the Associated Press, which, the Associated Press has taken a few on the chin over the last several years. But it's a very good news source. These are, excellent journalists. But I would encourage people to go out and consume your news from some reputable source, whether that's the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal. PBS NewsHour is excellent. Some woman took on this project of a media bias chart that laid out trying to use really objective criteria where various media sources are in terms of political bias and then reliability. And it's kind of a bell curve, right? And at the very top are those news sources that I just mentioned. And broadcast news, those guys do a good job too. CBS, ABC, NBC, that's legit news. When you start getting into some of these talk show programs on these cable news sites, that is not reliable news. I would not allow yourself to make decisions based on what you're hearing on one of these guys.
And there's so many of them.
I know.
There's so many. How is technology changing in the newspaper business right now? What do you see coming up, and what's happening right now?
You mean besides drone news gathering? No, that may be a thing. I was kidding. I think there is drone news gathering. There's some drone news gathering in some of these journalism schools, but I've not seen it deployed here. From a technological standpoint, what we've been able to chase is efficiencies in everything we do. If you look at what a newspaper is, it's a 17th century technology. It's insane that we still do this. Here's the business model. We're going to go out and cut down a whole bunch of trees, and we're going to grind them into a pulp, and we're going to turn that pulp into a very thin, smooth paper, and then we're going to go out and we're going to gather information about the community, and we're going to print it on that paper, and then we're going to go out and talk to businesses, and we're going to see if they want to be associated with that content, because we're going to do a really good job with making it good, reliable content, and we're going to put those businesses' message on that same paper, and then we're going to print this out in like 25,000 editions, and we're going to hand deliver it to 25,000 different households around the community, and then we're going to do this every single day. What kind of a business plan is that? The Shark Tank guys would just laugh you out of the room. But in fact, that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So technologically, we have an e-edition now that is a digital replicant of the paper, mm-hmm. With an additional 20 pages of national content, sports content, business market data, and sports agate, and some puzzles and games and stuff. And we just tack that onto the back of the paper, what is otherwise the Daily Sentinel. And that delivery method, hits your email. Well, it's available at 4 a.m. every day and hits your email about 6. I do think that ultimately that will end up with something like that, probably 5 days a week. And then 2 days, we'll be delivering a printed, like what is more like a news magazine, something with more analysis, more like long form journalism. So we're not going to stop printing the paper. That's not in the game. That's not in the foreseeable future. But I think our offering is going to diversify with that kind of a technology. In fact, there's a guy in Arkansas who has eliminated print. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette it's a big, important newspaper in Little Rock. And when you subscribe to the paper, you get an iPad.
What?
Yeah. And
come on, Jay.
That's it. And if you don't pay your bill, they brick it.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you think part of it is people just love that tradition of going outside, getting their paper, opening it up, and sitting with it with a cup of coffee for a while?
Yes, and it's very interesting to me. We look at these analytics every day and see how many people are accessing the e-edition. And on Mondays and Tuesdays, it just spikes. It goes up, because we don't have a print paper on Mondays and Tuesdays, it goes up to about 24,000 people reading that paper on those days. And then on the other 5 days, it drops down to like 500.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so everyone else just wants the printed newspaper. They know how to access it.
24,000 of them do.
Yeah, through the e-edition, but they go back to the printed product. Yeah. I think it is. I mean, it feels, I don't know about you, but we're probably similar in age. It feels more real if it's in my hands. I don't know why.
Well, I haven't gone to a Kindle yet, and I know lots of people love them, but I still like the feel of a book. Yeah. I really do. What would you say are some of the wins that you've had at the Sentinel since you've been there?
Yeah, I should have done my homework before I came in here, but one of the big ones was, we were able to determine that our school superintendent had significantly blown through his budget, and when we reported that, it was sort of an eye opener for the community. I think the community then understood, this is not the path forward. We can't trust this administration. We, as a community, turned over the superintendent. Mm-hmm. That was good watchdog journalism. Yeah. We were proud of that. We've had a number of other similar type of reports over the course of years. The county, not the current commission, but a previous commission had given raises in the dead of night, the type of thing that, in open, transparent government just shouldn't be happening. And we were able to discover that. We have also, I think, done a very good job with the Tina Peters coverage. A lot of that's broken through. I mean, we get the story through court filings or through, what are otherwise public developments, not our own enterprise journalism. Mm-hmm. But some of it actually has been us poking through and trying to figure out, what's going on. Now, part of the reason we've been effective in terms of reporting that story is because we have a DA who really believes in transparency, believes in his, the interests of his office align with the interests of our office, which align with the interests of taxpayers, and that is
transparency.
If they open the kimono and we understand what's going on, we report it correctly, and now the public understands what happened, that serves everybody. And it does not serve the wrongdoer. I mean, I don't think Tina Peters has any interest in us getting that story right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Interesting. Do you all have a kind of a front line on that because you're here and because you have access to documents that are filed, in the courts before anybody else does, or is it kind of?
We do those things, yes. We have the trust of, the other big players in this, which are the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State's office, they know that if it comes out of the Sentinel, it's going to be responsibly reported, and they'd rather have that than some, blogger or perhaps not as tuned journalists write about it, such that they will sometimes even seek us out. Okay, there's a story that's about to break. Will you guys write the story because we know you'll get it right? The New York Times came out, or they sent a reporter out to cover the story a month and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And he actually did break news. I mean, there was one little item that he beat us on, but everything else that he reported on, and he did a great job. It was stuff that we had reported on over the course of months, So, the New York Times is still the gray lady. I mean, it's still, the best newspaper in this country, and he did a fantastic job. But it's just satisfying to know that when you are doing the same story, are you getting at class? And the answer was clearly no.
That's great. I love that. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing your newspaper today?
Making sure that the bottom line is in the right color. Frankly, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Staying in business.
Yeah. Everything else is we can do. We've had customer service complications, carrier complications, workforce complications. That we can all navigate. I can navigate any ethical issue, any journalistic issue. The sole question is, do we have a sustainable business plan? And the newspaper industry has lost 85% of its advertising revenue. That's traditionally 80% of your revenue comes from advertising, 20% comes from subscriptions. Those lines have crossed at a lot of newspapers. The New York Times, for example, and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, they're doing better than any time in their history because of digital subscriptions. They've lost all that advertising revenue, but they've more than made up for it with digital subscriptions. We're not the New York Times. Those same rules don't apply to us, but we have to be better in terms of developing and maintaining our audience and having, asking people to pay for the newspaper. Historically, we could actually subsidize subscription rates with advertising revenue. It was, a very democratic institution, small d, so that anyone could afford the daily newspaper. Now we have to charge what it actually costs us to produce the paper and deliver it. And that's painful for a whole lot of people that have subscribed for, we have people who have subscribed for 70 years.
Right. And how much was it, even 15 years ago? What was the subscription rate?
Oh, yeah. I think our top rate 15 years ago would have been, like $165. Now, we double that for a whole lot of people.
What advice do you have for people that want to get into journalism? I mean, that's a tough business. I was listening to, I love the podcast Smartless. I don't know if you ever listened to that, but Anderson Cooper was on there and they were talking to him about visiting war zones and things like that. And obviously your journalists are not faced with those kind of things, but it's a tough job, don't you think?
Yes, it is a tough job. It's really important. It's never going to go away. We are always going to need people who can tell our story. The advice I would give is really twofold. One, be curious, ask questions. Develop a curious mind. Go through college with the idea that you're going to explore the human condition. I think if you kind of look at it from a 30,000 foot view, it makes you a better storyteller. The other thing I would suggest is embrace multimedia technology. Don't, our newsroom, I love those guys. Getting them to do something today that they didn't do yesterday is almost impossible. And so we need more journalists who can tell multimedia stories. And, the media that are before us today, this is what's today. Tomorrow in 5 years, there will be some new technology that we've never fathomed. And we need to be able to tell the story on that. I said the other day, why are we not on TikTok? And they laughed at me. And I was dead serious. Yeah. We need to be where the eyeballs are. We can't expect to just produce some, dead tree media and expect the next generation to pick this thing up. We need to hit them where they are.
I think you're right, Jay. We're doing it too. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk a little bit about Jay Seaton. Wine is a passion of yours, would you say? Colorado wine?
What are you saying, Christi?
How much do you drink every day? No, just kidding.
We
live in a great area, right? Like, it's so up and coming. There's so many new things to try all the time. I love Colorado wine.
Yeah, I've gotten into it. And, this valley is, the improvement has been vast over the last, I've been here 13 years. There have always been some good wines here, but now there's a really good ecosystem of some fabulous wines. And you can spend $100 on a bottle of wine here. And there are a couple of producers here who really know what they're doing. And I think, I don't want to focus on any particular winemaker, but Scott and Teresa High really said, look, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So they talk about this Robert Mondavi situation in Napa, where he really wanted to help all the other winemakers produce great wine. And I'm not sure how much impact they've had on other winemakers, but it has improved, I think, as an ecosystem such that, there's whereas, 12 years ago was a couple of good wines. Now that it's almost hard to find a wine that's not really quite good here.
Yeah, well, not just in the Grand Valley, but Paonia area has got some really good wineries and things too. I mean, it's raising the level all the way around.
Yeah, and it's I think some people think it's just sort of a quaint, like, tourist draw or something. That does not necessarily have to be the case. This could be a big, thriving, important industry.
Well, and with the amount of brew pubs that we're getting here in town too, I mean, we're turning into a place where you can come sample a lot of really good stuff. You got distilleries and wineries and brew pubs.
You tell me what you think about this, but this community went into recession in 2009, and it slid continuously until the second quarter of 17, and then it came out, and it's come out pretty strong ever since then. I'm really excited about this place. I mean, we're sitting in this very cool bonsai building at a new development. I mean, this is like nothing but junk and uranium mill tailings.
Just a few years ago. Yeah. Not long ago at all.
And you've got this butterfly lake that signals transformation. I mean, I think this place is under this extraordinary moment, and we're seeing it in terms of food offerings and brew pubs and wine.
Super exciting.
And you're in the right business.
Well, yeah. I mean, we get to talk to people every day who say, "I've just discovered this place, and I think I want to live here." And we say, "Yeah, you should, because it's great, and it's just getting better all the time." It's really fun. We just had a meeting with some folks here today from Flagstaff area who were like, "Yeah, better medical than we have there, and a little bit more to do, and a little less snow, and
in 45 minutes you can be clipping into your skis."
Yeah.
Sometimes I almost get like stressed out here because there's so much to do. Like I feel like pulled in all these different directions.
And my dog is like, you didn't take me for enough hikes this week. I was like, well, I'm sorry. I was doing this, and this, outside.
Yeah. It's, I moved here from Kansas City. I loved Kansas City. I mean, like if they had better weather, you'd have to build a wall around the place. It was the coolest people ever.
Good food.
I could never leave this place. I mean, if the Sentinel dries out and blows away, I'll join one of these law firms. It's I'm not going anywhere.
Sentinel is going to stay.
Okay.
Sure of it. What do you like to read and listen to? Do you listen to podcasts? And what kind of content, not necessarily media, but what kind of content do you consume?
Interesting question. So I've gotten into the Sam Harris podcast, Making Sense. Sam Harris is sort of famous, neuroscientist, philosopher type. He got into some sort of hot water with a book called The End of Faith after 9/11. And it's just very interesting. He's a very interesting interviewer. And he has various authors on the program talking about everything from artificial intelligence to our Ukraine situation. It's one of these things. It's just I feel like it's substantive food for the brain. I love that kind of stuff. I don't read enough fiction. I think I need to. I don't know why. If I'm going to read, I feel like I'm going to read this biography or I'm going to read this history or something.
So many good business books too. But when I go to the beach, I take a fiction novel usually.
That's the problem. Like once I get into fiction, it's like it's like a dog that spilled over the dog food bag. I just like eat, read it and then it's gone. And then and then I'm on to some dry biography and I'm like, I'll read 4 pages and put it down and come back to it in a week.
If you remember, we had lunch a few years ago and I asked you what your favorite book was and you told me Candy Bombers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Still on your favorites list?
It's definitely on the list. Maybe not my favorite at the moment, but it was so touching. Have you read that book?
Mm-mm.
It makes you very, very proud to be an American. And it's a reminder that, sure, we've got all this, we've got slavery and we've got a, difficult history and, some shameful things have happened in this country over time. But man, the general trajectory of this country is heroic. And this is the story of the Berlin Airlift. And in particular, these kids who, Berliners were in this, they would stage in this one area and the pilots, American pilots would open the window and drop candy out for these kids. It's really the story of Berlin, what was the most modern city in the world at the time and what happened to it through that war and the aftermath. But the story of that, what we did for those people and their continued appreciation throughout the rest of their lives, it's just fabulous. It's 800 pages.
Oh my gosh, maybe that's why I didn't read it, because I was like, I can't believe I didn't read it. I was looking back through my notes and I thought, Jay recommended this book and I haven't read it yet.
It's totally worth it. And it's not, I wouldn't call it a page turner, but it is fascinating.
Yeah, I'm going to pick it up. Well, it's been a pleasure having you here today, Jay. Anything else you'd like to share about yourself, the newspaper industry, Grand Junction, before we go?
No, but Christi, I really appreciate you doing this. This is a fascinating conversation and great questions. And I love stuff like this because it makes you reflect a little bit. And it's easy to reflect on how much you appreciate this place and the people here. Mm-hmm. We get focused on some of the bad stuff sometimes, but man, it's so far outweighed by all the good stuff.
I agree. There's so much good going on here and good people. I'm really a proud resident of this valley.
Yeah.
I know you are too.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Christi.
Thank you. Thanks to all of our listeners and watchers. This has been the Full Circle Podcast with Jay Seaton, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. This is Christi Reese signing out from the Full Circle Podcast.